Hello, my name is Dr. Michelle Devlin. I'm the professor of environmental security at the U.S. Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, in the United States. And my co-author for this presentation is Colonel Benjamin Ogden, assistant professor of strategic space studies, also with the U.S. Army War College. And we wanted to give you information, general overview of an interesting topic that we're looking at, one that relates to future human migration, particularly climate migration to Antarctica. And what are some of the long-range environmental security considerations and implications of this trend that we're trying to follow? So I think it's important to recognize, first of all, when we talk about climate and climate change, there is more going on in countries and in continents than just the melting of glaciers and the receding of sea ice. The human populations around the world are also changing. And we're seeing this accelerate due to climate change. We're seeing greater migration and greater environmental displacement of populations around the world. And in fact, by 2050, some estimates say that as many as 250 million, even up to 1 billion people could ultimately be displaced as environmental migrants, right, as climate refugees essentially around the world. Most of those people would probably still be within their own national borders, but an increasing number would potentially end up in other countries in resettlement countries where they could end up serving as workers and incoming populations in various nations. So basically, climate migration is already occurring. We're seeing it already around the world, and an increase in populations that are environmentally displaced. And we're seeing climate essentially function as an amplifier of human migration. It may not be the single push factor that is sending a population out of a certain region, but in many cases, climate is certainly amplifying human migration overall and functioning as an important push factor. And at the same time, we see pull factors going on globally that are literally serving as reasons for people to come into new regions. And what we're following is that climate itself, of course, and climate change is warming up, is thawing the polar regions, both the northern circumpolar region as well as Antarctica, right, in the southern circumpolar region. And certainly when you take a look at the northern Arctic region, the northern circumpolar region, we are already seeing an increase in people that are migrating from other parts of the world, and in some cases, those that are leaving areas that are increasingly affected by negative climate disasters and economies that may be severely affected, or sea level rise, for instance, in the Pacific. And these populations are increasingly migrating, and they're coming into areas of the world that are offering them attractive pull factors, or essentially high salaries. So in the northern polar area, the northern Arctic region, that's a part of the world where only 4 million people live. It is thawing, it's warming. There are more economic opportunities as oil and gas and mining. Potentially more of that is opened up, and there is a significant need for human labor. So I recently came from living and working up in northern Alaska, the Barrow-Utqiagvik area on the Arctic Ocean, and was quite surprised to see people from dozens and dozens and dozens of nations, particularly from the Asian Pacific Island region. And a number of them had left their homelands and were coming up to the northern Arctic region as workers. The local indigenous population was hiring them and recruiting them. So we're increasingly looking at this type of climate migration up into the Arctic area, and what we anticipate would likely happen in future decades down the road as climate disasters become more concerning, and as local economies in various countries can increasingly be impacted by climate. We expect to see also more human migration, very likely coming into the southern part of the hemisphere, of the world's hemisphere, including even into the Antarctic region. And most likely we would see these trends happening, at least initially, frankly, in the tourism industry that is As you know, one of the main source of human population down in Antarctica. We currently have over 120,000 people that tend to visit Antarctica on a yearly basis. That's far more than the 4,000 or so scientific researchers that come and go from Antarctica and do scientific research there and or overwinter. And again, I actually recently came back from Antarctica. I was on an environmental study tour, and it was quite interesting to see demographically the wide variety of ethnic populations and different cultural groups that are already working in the Antarctic tourist industry and have been doing so for a number of decades. And as climate again sends more people out of their countries as a push factor, and the high salaries that are paid for laborers, both in the northern polar region and the southern polar region in Antarctica as well, we do expect that the workforce and the humans in that part of the world will ultimately diversify much more intensely than they already are. And certainly when I was down in Antarctica within the tourism industry, there were many populations from countries ranging anywhere from the Philippines to Brazil, to Argentina, Chile, different Pacific Island nations and others that are coming and going as workers now in Antarctica. So as we look at these trends over future decades, again, we certainly need to consider the sociocultural, the security, and geopolitical ramifications and implications of increasing human density and human diversity within Antarctica. Thank you very much.